Today we are going to take a look at how to handle configuration in NestJS. NestJS has a configuration module, but in this video we are going to explore an alternative library that simplifies managing configuration from environment variables, configuration files, and also resolving secrets like database passwords and API keys. So the library, it's called configify, and it focuses on providing a clean and structured way to define configuration using classes and decorators. So let's take a look at how it works. So the main idea of configify is to map environment variables or configuration files to a class. So let's take a look at this example. Here we have two environment variables. We have application name and application environment. And this is represented in our code with a class called appConfig. In this appConfig class, we have a decorator called configuration. This is gonna tell configify to manage the instance of this appConfig class for us. And we also have the value decorator, which is going to bind the value from this environment variable to this class attribute. So now that we know the core idea, let's go ahead and set up configify in our project. So here we have our NestJS project, and the first thing we need to do is to install configify. So let's go ahead and do npm install save configify. Once this is done, we're gonna open our application module and we're going to import ConfigifyModule. So let's search for ConfigifyModule. And then we're going to call the static method for root async. And we are all set. We can already start defining our configuration files and configuration classes. So the next step, I'm just gonna start my application. So let's go ahead and do npm run start dev. We should get a hello world if we send a request to our application. And yep, here we have our hello world. So let's go ahead and start creating our configuration file and our configuration class. Okay, so let's close those files, and I'm gonna be working with a .env file. So let's go ahead and create a .env file. This is where I'm going to put my configuration. So I'm just going to start with some basic configuration. Let's say app configuration. I'm going to have a app name and a app environment. Next step, we're going to go to our source folder. I'm going to create a new directory. I'm going to call it config. And this is where I'm going to organize my configuration classes. Let's go ahead and create a new file. It's gonna be a TypeScript file. I'm gonna name it application.configuration.ts. And I want to open them side by side so we can see how we're gonna map our configuration to our class. So let's go ahead and create an application configuration class. Let's use the decorator configuration. Go and search for configuration. Then in our configuration, we have a application name, which is a string. And also we have a application environment. So let's say environment, which is also a string. And I'm gonna bind the value of my environment variable called app name to my attribute name. And I'm going to bind the value from my environment variable app.env to my environment attribute. Once this is done, we need to know how we can access this application configuration class, right? So configify makes the instance of the configuration classes globally available. So the only thing we need to do is to inject the classes, the instances of those classes in our class constructor. So I'm gonna close this configuration class. I'm gonna go to my project folder, and I'm gonna search for my app service. And here, what we want to do is to create a constructor. We're gonna have a private read only. I'm gonna call it just config, and this is gonna be my application configuration. So configify is going to inject the instance of this application configuration in our app service class, and we can start using. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the name of get hello to get config, because I'm going to return our configuration here just for us to be able to see it. So I'm just going to return json stringify my configuration, right? So when we make a request call to our application right now, we should not see the hello world, but instead we should see the contents of our application configuration, which is my app, and the application environment should be local. So let's go ahead and perform the request call. I'm just gonna execute this, and yes, here we have our application name in the application environment. Okay, so now that we know how to define our configuration classes, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can handle different types of configurations, right? Because here we have application name and application environment. They are both strings. But what if I have a number or a boolean or a date in my configuration file? So let's define them here. I have a port, which is a number. I have the debug enable, which is a boolean, and I have a release date, which is a date. So let's see how we can map them to our class. So let's bind the app port to our port attribute. And here we need to parse the value of this environment variable, because we know it's a string. So here we can say parse, and we're just going to give a function to parse that value. Here we should just use parse int. That should get the job done. Next, let's define the debug enabled, which is our debug enabled attribute. And in the parse function, I'm just going to say json parse, which should get the job done as well. And the last one is the release date, which is a date. So let's fix the typo here. Let's bind the value of our release date variable. And here I'm going to just create this customized function, which takes a value as string, and it transforms into a date. Let's save it. Let's go ahead to our requests file, and let's see how our configuration looks like right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and execute the request, and here we can see that we have our port, which is a number. We have the debug enabled, which is a boolean, and we have our release date, which is a date. Okay, so another cool feature that Configify provides, it is the possibility of injecting the configuration values to our configuration class constructor. And this is important if you are working in a strict mode in your project. So let's go ahead and open our tsconfig file. Let's set the strict mode to true. And once we save, our project will fail to start. And this is because we are not initializing our variables in an explicit way. So here Configify is injecting the values of those attributes at runtime, but now that we set this to strict mode, we should explicitly initialize those attributes. So how we can solve this? Configify offers another decorator, which is called required args constructor. And this is going to tell Configify to inject the values of our configuration to our constructor. So here we just declare a constructor. I'm going to receive here a config, and this should be required, and the type should be our application configuration. And here I can just assign the values to my attributes. So you can see that our application started, and let's go ahead and make another request call to see if we still have our configuration being handled correctly. So I'm just going to execute this, and here we can see that we have our configuration being returned. Another important thing we have with Configify is the possibility of validating our configuration classes, right? So let's say we have some critical configuration that if it's not set properly, it could cause some problems when running our application. So Configify uses a well-known library for validation. It is the class validator library, which allows us to perform validations using decorators as well. So let's see how that works. I'm just going to stop our application and let's install class validator. So let's go ahead and type npm install save class validator. I'm going to start our application again. And here, let's say my application name is required, right? So how we can do this? I'm just going to remove the value from my application name. And here I'm going to say my name, my application name should be defined, and also should not be empty. So when I save my class right now, my application should fail to start. And this is because I'm not providing a configuration that is required. So let's save. And we can see that our application failed to start because we are not providing the application name. Another thing that we can do is to provide default values either here in our configuration file or here in our code. So let's say if I don't provide a port, I can assume a default value. So let's add a validation. So this should be defined and it should be a number. So let's say is number. When I save this, it will fail because we are not providing a port, right? So our application failed to start. So let's add it here. Okay, if I don't have the application port provided by my configuration file, I'm going to assume a default value. Let's say here it is 3000 and our application started successfully. And let's test this. Let's go to our requests file. Let's perform a request and we can see that the port assumed the default value. Okay, so now let's take a look at one of the most important features that Configify has, which is the possibility of fetching secrets from major cloud providers like AWS or Google Cloud. So let's say we have a database configuration here, right? So we have our database host, database port, user, password, and database name. Now, we don't want to store our database password in clear text, right? We don't want to store it in our configuration file, and also we don't want to store this in an environment variable, right? So how we can handle secrets with Configify? So I'm just gonna switch to my AWS account. I'm gonna be using parameter store to handle my secrets. So I'm just gonna create a new parameter. I'm just gonna call it db password. I'm just gonna say this is a secure string, and here in the value, this should be our database password, right? So I'm just gonna say this is my db password, and this is our secret. I'm just gonna create this parameter, and I'm gonna copy this name because this is the reference that we are gonna pass to Configify to resolve. So let's go back to our project and what we are going to do here. So Configify will automatically pick up any environment starting with AWS parameter store. So we can name it AWS parameter store db password, and we're just gonna pass the reference to our secret, right? And another cool thing that we can do here is to use variables expansion. What that means? So here I'm just gonna say the value of my db password, it's going to be the value of the AWS parameter store db password variable. I'm just going to fix this. And now we need to go to our application module, and we need to tell Configify what is strategy we are going to use to resolve secrets, right? So here I'm just gonna open the configuration, and I'm gonna use the secrets resolver strategy. This is an array, and I'm gonna say let's use the AWS secrets resolver factory, and I want to use the default parameter store resolver. Here you can pass your own strategy resolver. You can pass your own instance. You can create your own, but Configify already has some default implementations for major cloud providers. Here we can save it, our application, it's going to restart, and now we need to define our database configuration class, right? So let's create a new file. I'm gonna call it database configuration.ts, and I'm gonna export class database configuration. Let me close this actually, and I'm gonna open this class side by side with our configuration class. So this is gonna make easier for us to visualize. So I'm gonna tell this is a configuration. I'm gonna say it is required to inject the configuration in our constructor. And let's define our database configuration class. So here we have a host, which is a string. We have a port, which is a number. We have the user, which is a string. We have our password, a string, and a database string. Now let's bind the values of each one of them. This is going to be our DB host. I'm just gonna copy. This is going to be our DB port. Here we need to parse because it is a number. So I'm just gonna parse and I'm gonna pass the parse int function. Here we have our DB user. Let's go with DB user. Here it is our DB password. And finally, we have our database name. I'm just gonna create our constructor. This is gonna take a config. It is required a database configuration, and I'm just going to assign the values to our attributes. Let's save, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open our application service. I'm just going to replace this configuration class to our database configuration, like that. And now when we send a request to our application, we should be able to see our database configuration, including our database password. That is a secret that was fetched from AWS. So here we only have the reference, right? And this should be resolved. Let's go ahead and open our requests file, and let's perform a request call. Here we can see that we have our database configuration, and we have our password, which is, this is my database password, which is the value that it was resolved from AWS. Alright, so that wraps up our tutorial. If you're interested in trying this library, I'm gonna leave the link to the GitHub project in the video description. So thanks for watching and see you next time.